Right, thanks for staying with us. The Presidential CNG Initiative, also known as the Pi-CNG, is a great program going by the reactions from many observers. And this policy was established by the Tinubu administration to provide relief to the public after the removal of fuel subsidies by the federal government. The initiative seeks to provide alternative sources of fuel such as CNG and EV for vehicles, which promises to greatly benefit the public. Well, Pi-CNG is said to not just be a test phase, but a well-planned effort to promote the adoption of CNG for transportation in line with the national policy on transportation already adopted. It also aims to implement the use of CNG from start to finish to reduce costs and carbon emissions. The key objective of the Pi-CNG is to decrease transportation expenses for Nigerians by making use of the cheaper gas alternative that is abundant but currently underutilized in Nigeria. Additionally, this initiative aims to provide cleaner alternatives to PMS and diesel as fuel for transportation, which will help Nigeria to meet its national determined contributors commitments while simultaneously capturing a resource that's currently being fled. And overall, the Pi-CNG is a great initiative that will go a long way in providing relief to the public as well as promoting sustainable development in Nigeria. Well, this is what we'll be talking about. How far with the Pi-CNG initiative, as we bring in now engineer Michael Oluwagbemi. He's been with us on a number of occasions to talk about the potential of the Pi-CNG, and he is also a director of the program. Thank you for joining us again on TVC Breakfast, Mr. Oluwagbemi. Let's begin right away with how far. So what's the update regarding the CNG drive? There's been so many talks about the building of stations, CNG stations, but bring us up to speed with what has been achieved so far and how vehicles can tap into this drive.
Thank you very much once again, and good morning to all your viewers. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. Since the initiative was launched by Mr. President in October last year, there's been a number of aggressive actions as well as progress that has been made by the initiative. First and foremost, the program undertook a serious master planning, long-term plan for the energy transition in the transportation sector, and that was approved by Mr. President, which calls for a conversion of about 1 million vehicles in the next 4 years, and the setting up of all of the necessary infrastructures, including 37 mini energy plants across Nigeria, over 3,000, almost over 2,000, almost 3,000 refueling stations, the development of over 1,000 conversion centers, 25,000 technicians, all of the necessary things that the industry that is going to emerge from these will require to function. The master planning of that and the development of the template for planning was developed. In addition to this, working with the Federal Ministry of Finance, the President had made available a significant sum of 100 billion naira to procure some items for pilots for the purpose of demonstration. I have to be very clear that for this industry to properly transition in the next 4 years, to have those 1 million vehicles converted and various new platforms supported, there will be a need for about investment of $2.5 billion. So 100 billion naira was just a down payment by the federal government through the palliative program under the Ministry of Finance to procure some of the necessary materials to demonstrate and to help catalyze the industry. The president was very clear that the Pi-CNG initiative, which I am fortunate to lead, does not replace the private sector. The private sector ultimately is the best allocator of resources when it comes to ensuring that Nigeria transitions from PMS and diesel to CNG in the transport sector. And so that procurement had been undertaken by the Ministry of Finance, and was concluded. Most of the issues around identification of items and vendors were concluded last year. And we are well on course to helping the Ministry of Finance to ensure the delivery of these items in the next 3 to 4 months, 5 to 5 months. Some of these include some of the CNG conversion kits that will be necessary to undertake some of the initial conversions, supporting members of the Nigerian Union of Road Transport Workers, RTA, NATO, ride shares, and all of those guys that is necessary that will impact the transportation sector. Also, the distribution of some of the tricycles acquired and some of the buses that were also acquired under the Federal Ministry of Finance. So that was also undertaken. In addition to this, the most important part of this program has been the launching of the auto-gas conversion initiative. 8 pilot centers have been signed on with key partners across the country in 8 cities, 8 states across Nigeria, and now they already broke ground on 3 of them as of last year, and the additional 5 will be breaking the ground on them in the next 4 to 5 weeks. Sorry. In addition to this, the federal government, working with the private sector, December 2019 last year, we had the CNG Investment Summit, which is to encourage that funding I talked about, that is the funding gap, to come off the sidewalk, to encourage investors to invest. And quite successful, we were able to get investment commitment of over $45 million. Under that, various organizations, including BOVAs, are investing in 10 mobile refueling units across Nigeria, costing them almost $10 million. NIPCO is investing. You have various organizations, more than 20 organizations that have signified interest to open conversion centers across the country, and they're already doing so. We witnessed the opening of a major conversion center by Portland in Lagos last year, Autogas in Ibadan. And every day, we are seeing more and more private sector investment into the autogas conversion, CNG autogas conversion sector. So these are one of many of the achievements of the initiative since October of last year. And we continue to press forward. In the last 3 months, we've succeeded in helping to train and support the training of technicians, working with also the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment and the Standards Organization of Nigeria. We're able to get over 29 regulatory standards approved for the sector, something that had not been missing all along, and we're able to push it out in less than 2 months, and they are now awaiting final ministerial assents. So these are just one of many of the achievements of the initiative. But like I said, a journey of many steps, of 1,000 steps, starts with the first one. And I'm confident that with the faith and commitment of the Nigerian people and the confidence and as well as the will, a strong will that the president has put behind the initiative, we're going to achieve it.
It's quite interesting that your open remark actually, it's all encompassing. But all the same, with all that being said, how do you envision the adoption? Because it's one thing to have this, beautiful initiative, bringing it to Nigerians. But then, how do you envision the widespread adoption by Nigerians? Because they're so used to the premium motor spirit, diesel, etc. And do you talk to us about other specific industries or sectors that stand to benefit from this initiative?
Thank you very much. I think adoption is going to be part of our key drive. So one of the things that we're doing quite a bit of is stakeholder engagement, but also providing the incentives to ensure adoption. For example, in December, the President and the Federal Minister of Finance, the Coordinating Minister of Economy approved import duty waiver as well as VAT waiver for the sector, which means that whether it's your electric vehicle or your CNG vehicles, you bring it into Nigeria, it's now zero duty VAT as well as 0% duty as well as 0% VAT. This is very significant to enable and to catalyze adoption, because that allows the platforms to be brought in and that allows business people to fund this. And even beyond that is that this impacts quite a bit of a number of sectors. For example, this week we are launching pilots with the Nigerian Army, and which again, Nigerian Army is one of the biggest, if not the biggest user of diesel and petrol in Nigeria. The biggest single user of diesel and petrol in Nigeria is the Nigerian Army, given that it's operating all the states of the Federation, different theaters of operation, as we speak, and to serve over 130,000 men in operation. And that's a significant cost of operation for the Nigerian Army. So this invariably affects and impacts our security. And so we're working with the Nigerian Army to undertake some fleet conversions. And this naturally affects the security sector. It affects all of us in one way or the other. We are launching similar initiatives with other security agencies. And the importance of this also is that it drops the cost of governance. Because ultimately, when Nigerian Army spends on PMS and diesel, it's not just Nigerian Army actually spending, it's you and I's taxpayers' money that is being expended. And if spending and leveraging our money on CNG to fund their vehicles is to fuel their vehicle is much more efficient, then it's better spent than on CNG than on PMS and diesel. And that's what we are working with the Army to achieve in the next few weeks under the pilot, and then to identify the parts of their components of their fleet that can benefit from this. Of course, the gospel of CNG has spread across the country beyond transportation, also has its uses on numerous other sectors, including, of course, power. For example, we're collaborating with the state government. So one of the critical things that we're doing is subnational coordination. Everybody always talks about federalism. The real reality is that states are meant to be the experimental labs for a democracy. We are collaborating with them. They are the ones ultimately that govern at the state level. They're the ones ultimately responsible for the transportation sector. It's on the concurrent list, but states are the ones that have primary regulatory responsibility for the land transport sector in their states. So in Ekiti State and also in Kano and as well as in Maiduguri, that's in Borno State, there's been significant engagement by their states, even in Ogun State and in Lagos, around how to help convert the mass transportation of their states into CNG. But that also has other impact because apparently, because of the constitutional amendment passed last year, that allows states to generate power. Most of these states are also depending on CNG to generate power. So the consequence of us bringing CNG to their states and helping their mass transit fleet conversion is that they don't also have enough energy to help support the power sector. Some of these rural or peri-urban states are developing to ensure that they have power to fuel the economic growth. So once CNG is widely used and CNG refueling stations are available, then the power plants, it is launched on a 5 megawatt IPP power plant to power some significant establishments in Ado-Ekiti. Now they will be able to rely on the source of supply for both the mass transit as well as the CNG on the same, ensure to enhance the viability of the power sector in the state as well as that of the mass transit sector. So these things have far-reaching consequences, these decisions and these policies. It takes time to gestate, I have to warn, but it's also very critical that we set our eye on the ball. If we had been doing this 20, 30 years ago, we would be in a much better shape when it comes to energy efficiency as well as energy usage and the diversity of our energy mix when it comes to our transportation sector and the impact of the changes on crude oil prices on our people and the economic consequences of the fuel subsidy removal. But like it's never too late, and that's what we're undertaking. Because if we look at the amount of money we spent over the years on subsidy, Nigeria used about 7 million naira per vehicle per year in the last 20 years to subsidize. It costs less than 1 million naira to convert an auto gas a vehicle to a bi-fuel hybrid. Imagine what we could have done if we had correctly allocated our resources. One, we'll be taking and making use of the gas that we're flaring. Two, we'll be signaling to investors. We decide to do a national mass conversion program that we're going to utilize and we're going to invest in gas. And there will be much more investment upstream gas in our gathering and in our processing and our compression. And so a lot of jobs would have been created instead of the frittering away that has gone on under the subsidy regime. So I think the opportunities here are boundless, and I just think that we need to continue to put our eye on the ball and continue to execute while ensuring we get the feedback of the people and we massage and we modify as we go along as need be.
Right, but there is a perception about the availability of these stations, these CNG stations across the country. Some stakeholders are saying this challenge, this lingering challenge, is hampering the president's drive, the president's mission to, of course, upscale on this CNG and the positives that it brings. There's also the issue of the 55,000 conversion kits, which we understand that there is a target, so to speak, that it will be available latest March the 31st. Bring us up to speed, with these concerns. Yeah,
the infrastructure don't show up overnight. I mean, and if you want good things, you have to invest in them. So for us, the most important thing is that we must, as a nation, be focused on, on the end goal and then work towards it, knowing and bearing in mind fully that government cannot do everything. So government is not going to be the one that will build the infrastructure. Government did not build the infrastructure of PMS. It's not government that owns petrol stations. It's not government that owns tank farms. It's not government alone that owns refineries. So what you have to bear in mind is that what government can do is to provide enabling environment, is to provide a catalyst like this program that we're doing, and then ensure and work with the private sector to deliver the infrastructure necessary to support any industry to create the jobs that is required. In the case of CNG, we understand and we are aware of this gap in infrastructure. And that's the reason why one of the primary policy choices that we made upfront was one that enabled the use of both PMS, diesel, and CNG side by side by emphasizing conversions. So if you are converting, because we are emphasizing the conversion aspect of this program instead of the OEM-built CNG, pure CNG vehicles, what we are essentially saying is that your vehicle can use either PMS or CNG and can switch seamlessly, such that when you're in an area where there's no infrastructure for CNG or you do not have access to CNG, you can buy your fuel, and because your vehicle is running on hybrid, it's a bi-fuel PMS CNG hybrid, and it will continue to run very efficiently. But of course, because you'll be mixing that for CNG and PMS over a period of time, your cost of energy will have dropped significantly because CNG is significantly cheaper than PMS and diesel. And so by making the policy choice of encouraging conversion into bi-fuel hybrid vehicles, we recognize and we are acknowledging the significant infrastructure gap. But what else are we doing to bridge that gap? One, of course, is the working with the investors. Like I said, the CNG summit we had December 19 last year was quite a success, and more benefits and fruits of that summit are beginning to emerge. But beyond that is that government itself is putting in place policies to catalyze and incentivize investment in the sector. The import duty waiver, the elimination of VAT in the sector, a significant boost for investors. We are also leveraging and working with the private sector to look at setting up a segregated CNG fund later in the year that will be able to invest directly, proactively into the sector, working with private sector investors that will be making all of this choice and bringing in their money to do a lot of the investment required. Because like I said, $2.5 billion investment gap, government alone cannot by itself meet that gap in the next 4 years. But we're working with the private sector to achieve it. In terms of the conversion kits that you spoke about, yes, these were part of the acquisition that was done by the Federal Ministry of Finance. Unfortunately, the procurement law of the nation does seem to slow down progress on all fronts, not just on the CNG front. But we are working with them, the Federal Ministry of Finance, to bridge that process, to bridge that gap. And they are working very hard to ensure the rapid delivery of some, if not all, of the required kits as soon as possible. Because, of course, a lot of these kits are not made locally. And there again is another area of opportunity. We recognize that in the first phase of this program, because we have not invested in the sector, in the manufacturing of kits, of potencies of cylinders, CNG cylinders, as well as all of the necessary equipment that goes into the CNG sector. Most of what we're doing, or most of the equipment, as well as the accessories that are being brought into the country, including CNG cylinders, are imported.
That's right.
But we are working already and developing a framework for local manufacturing. And that's something that we're hoping to, that at least in the next round of procurement, we will not be waiting for 5, 6, 7 months to get any material. They are manufactured locally. And it also will not put additional pressure on Nigeria's FX demands. So these are things that we need to work in through the first order instead of just, of course, we would have hoped some of these things can be done instantly, but the reality of it is that you have to work first order in these days in Nigeria.
Interesting stuff. But one thing I need you to help us clarify something. Is the CNG coming to supplant the use of petrol, for cars especially, which is the major means of transportation for commercial workers, those who actually go about the businesses, and that's one. And then if you look at the 18-seater bus, I saw some of the pilot vehicles that were used to showcase this initiative. I saw that the 18-seater bus, the Hammer bus that was showed, it has the gas cylinder right behind the seat. And if you bring this to those who are transporters, Lagos where I am, you have this space. This is where they, when it comes to loading, when it comes to loading commuters, luggages and all of that, they make use of this space. Is there no other way that you can, position this so that they can adopt? Because when they see that it's going to clash with their own means of livelihood, they might not want to adopt it, no matter how beautiful, it tends to be. That's my worry.
Yes. So the first question is PMS going to CNG going to support PMS. That's our hope. Our hope is that, especially when it comes to that, because Nigeria is a rapidly growing economy, it's a rapidly developing economy, and so our expectation is that demand for PMS in Nigeria will continue to grow if we do not find an alternative fuel to stem that demand. And PMS in the foreseeable future, because of the policies of the world when it comes to energy transition and clean energy, is in the foreseeable future, and especially the geopolitical pressures, is going to continue to be expensive. And so that will mean that we'll be depending on a very expensive form of fuel for the growth of our economy if we do not think of an alternative, which is the reason why CNG as well as EVs come into play. And so, yes, our expectation and our goal in the energy transition, we call it just energy transition, is that CNG, which is produced locally, is much, much cheaper. We're already wasting it. We should turn it into wealth, should supplant PMS over the long period of time. Now, to the second question around design, I think that there are room for there are different ways to position tanks. The reality and the good fortune is that the tank's position is quite safe inside the vehicle itself, given the technologies that the CNG sector had developed over many, many years. Japan have been using CNG exclusively almost for their commercial vehicles over 40 years. And so with the positioning of the tank can be modified for the purpose of transporters, for the purpose of even the military. The military is asking for a modified positioning of that tank, according to what I understand, with the pilot that is being launched this week. And that is natural. And that modification can be done on site. Again, you're doing the conversion yourself. You can decide where you want to place these things and how and best to position them. Some folks, even rather than putting them at the back, put them under the seats, and they're very various places. Just the way you position your fuel tank, even in those buses, if you're some of those ancient buses, commercial buses that we use in Ibadan back in the day where I grew up there, there were very positions where the fuel tank could be found because they were mostly retrofitted by local mechanics and technicians. And in this case, there's an opportunity to do that. I'm sure that the ingenuity and the innovation of the Nigerian technician and mechanics is going to come into play as we develop the auto gas conversion sectors, such that to make sure that it's still attractive for the road transport workers and road transport owners to leverage this CNG initiative to deliver higher profit margins to themselves and lower costs to the people.
Right, but what's the feasibility plan of this CNG initiative? How sustainable is it? Because many Nigerians are also asking about perhaps there is need to also do some more form of mass awareness about the gains.
Yeah, again, you can never communicate enough. Thanks to your platform, I've been opportunity to continue to come here to explain the last 3 months of our initial operation, and pleased to be back here this morning to report some progress and continue to sensitize the Nigerian people about the upsides of this program and the benefit it portends for the Nigerian people. And I think that is important. It's important for us to keep the conversation open. It's important for us to sensitize our people about what is being done and what needs to be done. It's important for us to keep it straight and honest. Where we are facing challenges, for example, like I mentioned, with respect to the work of the Federal Ministry of Finance to procure some of those items and the reality of our situation, we should communicate that also and be very clear to the Nigerian people about those challenges. But what should also be clear is that the nation needs it. It's not just ultimately when we have this conversation about energy transition, it's ultimately about the needs of Nigeria for lower cost of fuel for its transportation sector that drives about 15 to 18% of the spending of an average household or family in Nigeria. We're able to drop that. That allows them to use that money to do some other things, to send a child to school, to educate a child, to solve an health challenge, to build a home, to buy a car. The whole idea is that if you're not spending that much on something that is so essential and fundamental, then you can use it to do other things that helps to enhance your quality of life. For Nigeria, it also allows our economy to be more competitive over the long period of time. If we are using and expending our own natural gas, which we are currently flaring and wasting, and turning into a resource that helps to power our economy at a lower cost, then it's good for Nigeria. Nigeria has a competitive economic advantage when it comes to the rest of the world. We are also going to be building companies in our automotive sector. We're going to be working with the automotive industry to develop these hybrid CNG vehicles and CNG vehicles. We manufacture not just for Nigeria, but for the rest of Africa, where they can export and ship these to. That allows Nigeria to then even sell our gas to our neighbors and then power their own economy also with this much lower, much cheaper energy source. So the benefits will continue to communicate. The sensitization will continue to engage. We cannot achieve this overnight. It's not by the snap of the finger, but we will continue to do these much needed task with the people.
Yeah, in the face of the climate change, the global warming, and etc., which is a contribution of how we're using using this gas, fuel, and all of those things, and how they're affecting the ozone layer. Can you help us quickly understand the advantages of which you've already spoken, the CNG, especially reducing emission and improving air quality as against what we are currently used to, and most importantly, the environmental challenges or concerns that this might still have, as we battle or race against the damage to our climate?
Yes, as you know, the natural gas is much cleaner form of transportation, hydrocarbon, than PMS and diesel, which are derivative of crude oil refining. We need 95% less emission, just generally in terms of what they produce. Tailpipe emission reduced directly by 30 to 40% by using CNG vehicles rather than using PMS vehicle, and even much more relatively cleaner than diesel, which even burns dirtier than PMS. So this is the reality. It allows us, CNG is a much, of course, naturally, it contains less of these greenhouse gases. It allows us to be able to meet our nationally determined estimates under the Paris Accord. Beyond that also is that currently, if you are not using that natural gas, you are flaring it, which means that you are damaging the environment. So it's a better utilization of a God-given resources that we can turn away from environmental liability to an environmental advantage. And so these are the direct benefits of using CNG that we're blessed with as a country. Nigeria is a gas province that happens to have oil. But over years, we've emphasized the utilization of our oil, the monetization of our oil. A lot of our industry in the oil and gas industry, even though we call it oil and gas, has been primarily around oil because we've not found the right domestic utilization of these natural resources. This allows us to do so, and it gives us the impetus to invest in the sector to create the jobs that we need.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Michael Oluwagbemi, that will be a fine place to leave our conversations this morning on the progress being made with the Presidential CNG Initiative and, of course, the potential for even more gains. We thank you very much for your contributions on the program today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, and we will bring you much more on TVC Breakfast when we return.